Today, I'm going to show you how to make a simple yet very useful DIY shower head using an old plastic container. The best part is that most of the materials we need are easy to find around the house. First, I prepare an old plastic container that is no longer being used. After cleaning it thoroughly, I mark an exact point in the center of the container's cap. This will be the position where the water inlet will be installed, so finding the center accurately will help keep the shower head balanced when it is finished. Next, I use a drill to make a hole in the cap that matches the size of the plastic threaded fitting. After drilling, the edge of the hole is still rough, with a few small pieces of plastic sticking out. I carefully use a small knife to trim away the excess plastic and make the opening cleaner and smoother. Now comes a small but very important detail. I take a piece of rubber, make a small hole in the center, and place it over the plastic threaded fitting to check the size. Then, I use scissors to trim evenly around the rubber piece, creating a properly sized gasket. Once everything is prepared, I push the plastic threaded fitting through the rubber gasket and install it into the hole I just made in the container cap. The rubber gasket helps create a tighter seal and reduces the chance of water leaking around the connection. With just a few simple steps, this old plastic container has already started its transformation into a useful part of our DIY shower head. And this is only the beginning. If you want to see how the finished product works, make sure to keep watching until the end of the video. By the way, which country are you watching this video from? Let me know in the comments below. After securing the plastic threaded fitting to the container cap, I continue by preparing another small piece of rubber to use as a washer. This helps make the connection tighter and more watertight. I place the rubber piece over the threaded section, carefully align it, and slide it into position. It may seem like a small detail, but it plays an important role because once water and pressure are introduced into the system, an improperly sealed connection could cause water to leak out. Next, I take a threaded plastic valve and slowly screw it onto the prepared threaded fitting. I tighten it just enough to keep all the parts securely in place without damaging the plastic or the rubber gasket. At this point, the connection on the container cap looks much neater and feels considerably more secure. But for the container to work the way we want, there is still another interesting step ahead. I choose a suitable position on the side of the container and mark it before drilling. Once the position is determined, I use a drill to make a hole through the wall of the container. After drilling, the edge of the hole is still a little rough, with some excess plastic around it. So, I carefully use a small knife to trim and clean up the edges, making the surface smoother and easier for the valve to fit properly. Next, I take an old bicycle valve that has already been used. Instead of throwing it away, I decide to give it a second life in this DIY project. I insert the valve through the newly drilled hole in the side of the container, then carefully reinstall each of the components that I removed earlier. I check every part to make sure everything is positioned correctly and tightened securely without applying too much force. Step by step, this old plastic container is gradually being transformed into something completely new. And the most exciting part is still ahead, because now we are getting closer to connecting the system and finding out whether this simple DIY idea can actually work. After finishing the valve section on the side of the container, I continue by installing a double-ended male threaded fitting to complete the water outlet. Before screwing it into the valve, I wrap a layer of PTFE tape around the threads. This is a simple step, but it should not be skipped, because the PTFE tape helps create a tighter seal and reduces the chance of water leaking during use. Then, I carefully screw the threaded fitting into the valve and tighten it securely without applying excessive force. At this point, the pressurized water container is basically complete. Now it's time to find out whether this idea actually works. First, I fill the container with a suitable amount of water, then carefully check all the connections to make sure nothing is loose. Next, I use a hand pump to introduce air into the container through the valve. I pump slowly without creating excessive pressure, while continuously checking the container and all the connections to make sure everything remains stable. Once the pressure inside the container is sufficient to push the water out, I connect the water hose to the threaded outlet. Then, I attach the shower head to the end of the hose and tighten all the connections securely. Everything is now ready, and this is the moment we've been waiting for. I slowly open the valve, and immediately, water begins flowing through the shower head. The water comes out with a strong flow, creating a spray similar to a regular shower. It's quite satisfying to see how an old plastic container and a few simple components can be transformed into a DIY shower system that can be useful in suitable situations. If you find this DIY idea interesting, let me know what you think in the comments below. And have you subscribed to my channel yet? If not, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss my next DIY projects.